When World War I began in 1914, many soldiers believed the war would end quickly. Leaders promised victory within months. Young men across Europe marched proudly into battle, convinced they would return home as heroes. But what actually happened was very different. Instead of a fast victory, the war turned into something far more terrifying, a brutal stalemate that would trap millions of soldiers in one of the most horrifying battlefields in human history. Welcome to the nightmare of trench warfare, life inside the trenches. As the fighting intensified between Germany and the Allied forces of France and the United Kingdom, both sides began digging long defensive lines across Europe. These deep ditches in the ground became known as trenches. The trenches stretched for hundreds of miles across the Western Front. Soldiers lived there for weeks, sometimes months. But life inside the trenches was miserable. The ground was always wet and muddy. Rats crawled everywhere. Diseases spread quickly, and the smell of smoke, sweat, and fear filled the air. Soldiers slept in the mud, ate cold rations, and waited every day for the next attack. Just a few feet away, on the other side of the battlefield, enemy soldiers were waiting in their own trenches. Between the two sides was a deadly open space, known as no man's land. Anyone who stepped into that area risked being shot within seconds. The new kind of war, World War I, introduced weapons the world had never seen before. Machine guns could fire hundreds of bullets in minutes. Artillery shells exploded across the battlefield, destroying everything around them. And for the first time in history, chemical weapons were used in large-scale combat. In 1915, German forces released chlorine gas during a battle in Europe. The gas moved slowly across the battlefield, like a deadly fog. Soldiers who inhaled it struggled to breathe. It was one of the most frightening weapons ever used in war. Soon, both sides began developing gas masks to survive these attacks. But the horrors of the battlefield continued to grow. Another new weapon appeared during the war: the tank. First introduced by the United Kingdom in 1916, tanks were designed to break through enemy trenches. These armored vehicles slowly rolled across the battlefield, crushing barbed wire and protecting soldiers from machine gun fire. Even the sky was no longer safe. Airplanes began fighting above the battlefield, creating the first air combat battles in history. War was changing faster than anyone expected. The war spreads across the world. Although much of the fighting happened in Europe, World War I quickly became a global conflict. Countries from every corner of the world joined the fighting. The Ottoman Empire joined Germany and Austria-Hungary. Meanwhile, Allied forces fought battles across Africa, the Middle East, and the oceans. But one powerful nation was still staying out of the war: the United States. At the beginning of the war, the United States chose neutrality. Many Americans believed the conflict was a European problem. President Woodrow Wilson promised to keep the country out of war. But as the conflict dragged on, events began to push America closer to the battlefield. The turning point: Germany had one powerful strategy to defeat the Allies. Their navy began using submarines called U-boats. These submarines attacked ships traveling across the Atlantic Ocean. At first, they targeted military and supply ships. But soon, civilian ships were also being attacked. One of the most shocking incidents happened in 1915. A British passenger ship called the RMS Lusitania was traveling from New York to Europe. Without warning, a German submarine launched a torpedo. The ship sank in just minutes. Nearly 1,200 people died. Among them were 128 American citizens. The news shocked the United States. Public anger toward Germany began growing rapidly. Still, America did not enter the war immediately. But in 1917, another event pushed the United States closer to joining the fight. German leaders secretly sent a message to Mexico. This message became known as the Zimmermann Telegram. Germany promised Mexico land in the United States if Mexico joined the war against America. When this message was revealed to the public, outrage spread across the country. Now, the pressure was too strong to ignore. In April 1917, President Woodrow Wilson asked Congress to declare war on Germany. And just like that, the United States officially entered World War I. A new power enters the war. The arrival of American soldiers changed everything. Fresh troops, new supplies, and massive industrial power began supporting the Allied forces. Germany now faced a powerful new enemy, and the balance of the war was about to shift. But the conflict was far from over. The final battles would become some of the most intense fighting the world had ever seen, and the war's ending would reshape global politics for decades.